It was a scorching May afternoon in Ouagadougou in 2025 when Ibrahim Traoré received a phone call that would alter the course of everything. On the other end was CNN's Jake Tapper, presenting an unexpected proposal. President Traoré. Tapper said, Donald Trump has agreed to participate in a live televised debate tomorrow night, and he specifically requested your presence. Ibrahim paused, absorbing the statement. At 35, he had grown familiar with the intricate puzzles of international diplomacy, but a head-to-head debate with Donald Trump, broadcast on American television, was entirely uncharted territory. What's the format? Ibrahim asked, stepping toward the window of his presidential office. An hour-long, live, uncensored, free-to-air program. Jake replied, Trump claims he wants to clarify a few things about Africa and he named you directly. A faint smile crossed Ibrahim's face. Trump, now 78, had reclaimed the presidency with his usual bravado, but also brought with him divisive views about African nations. I agree, Ibrahim said, even surprising himself, but on one condition: there must be a simultaneous broadcast here in Burkina Faso as well as in Washington. In the Oval Office, Trump received news of Ibrahim's agreement. Perfect, he told his chief of staff. This African kid has no idea who he's dealing with. Melania, seated nearby, raised an eyebrow. Donald, maybe you should prepare a bit more. He's smarter than you think. Trump chuckled. Mel, I've handled Xi Jinping, Putin, all the major players. A 35-year-old president from a country most Americans can't even locate. Please, but Ibrahim had already started intense preparations, knowing this might be the most pivotal moment of his political life. Within 2 hours, news of the Trump versus Traoré debate ignited across social media, trending globally. At the presidential palace, Ibrahim convened his senior team. Do not underestimate this moment, he told his advisors. Trump is unpredictable, seasoned, and needy, but we hold something far more powerful, the truth about modern Africa. His top advisor, Moussa Kabor, looked uneasy. Mr. President, Trump is infamous for his provocations. How do you plan to respond? Ibrahim replied with calm assurance. With data, with education, with dignity. If he provokes, we respond with facts. If he stereotypes, we respond with reality. Fatimata Sawadogo, the economy minister, placed a heavy briefcase on the table. Mr. President, I've compiled every key economic, social, and development indicator from the past 3 years. If he doubts our capabilities, we will show him results. Meanwhile, in Washington, Trump was meeting with his strategy team. Unlike Ibrahim's detail-focused approach, Trump leaned on instinct in his long media career. What's our plan, sir? His communications director asked. Simple, Trump said. I'm going to prove to the American people that I'm still the world's strongest leader. This kid may be clever, but geopolitics is not a child's game. Steve Bannon, his strategist, offered a warning. Mr. President Traoré is not to be taken lightly. He has a strong academic background, real grassroots support, and compelling rhetoric. Trump waved him off. Steve, don't hype him up. At 35, I was building an empire. He's playing president. Back at CNN headquarters, Jake Tapper and his team were working around the clock to organize what was shaping up to be the most watched political event of the year. By the morning of the debate, May 22, 2025, the world was buzzing about the historic face-off set for 9:00 p.m. Washington time. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim awoke at 5 a.m. and began his usual routine of physical training and meditation. His wife, Ajara, found him in the palace garden, sipping his morning coffee. How are you feeling? She asked, sensing his composure. Confident, he replied. We're not going to battle, we're going to enlighten. Millions of Americans have never heard the voice of a young, informed African leader. In Washington, Trump was seated in the Oval Office watching Fox News' pre-debate commentary. One pundit noted, Trump has the edge in experience. But Traoré has surprised many with his clarity and poise on the world stage. Trump clicked away, grumbling, fake news. Over at CNN, Jake Tapper finalized technical setups. 2 studios, one in Atlanta for Trump, another in Ouagadougou for Ibrahim, were linked via satellite. This is historic, Tapper told his staff. Never before has a sitting U.S. president debated an African leader live on national television. At 3:00 p.m. in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim gathered his final prep team. Dr. Ouedraogo, the foreign minister, gave his last piece of counsel. Mr. President, remember you speak not only for Burkina Faso, but for a new generation of African leadership. Ibrahim nodded. I won't let them down. Trump stepped into CNN's Atlanta studio, dressed in his trademark blue suit and red tie, radiating his usual self-assuredness. Greeting Jake Tapper with a smirk, he quipped, Jake, I hope your African friend is ready for this. Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, it was 11:00 p.m. when President Ibrahim Traoré entered the specially constructed studio inside the palace. He wore a sleek black suit, symbolizing the gravity and dignity of the moment. At 9:00 p.m., Eastern Time, 2 a.m. in Burkina Faso. Jake Tapper opened what was being called the most anticipated broadcast of the year. Good evening, America. Tonight, we bring you a historic debate between U.S. President Donald Trump, here in Atlanta, and President Ibrahim Traoré, joining us live from Burkina Faso. The screen split in two. Trump seated in a luxurious American studio, while Ibrahim appeared in a modest yet elegant setting, framed by the Burkina flag. President Trump, Tapper began, you personally requested to debate President Traoré. Why? Trump leaned forward, his trademark smile flashing. Simple, Jake. I'm tired of inexperienced leaders pretending to understand global affairs. This Traoré guy may be popular in his country, but international politics isn't student government. Ibrahim sat still, offering a faint but confident smile. When his turn came, his tone was calm, yet unwavering. With all due respect, President Trump, experience isn't just about age, it's about impact. If we judge leadership by what one has achieved for their people, then I believe we have much to discuss. Trump let out a loud laugh. Kid, I was a billionaire at 35. You're running a country most of my voters couldn't point to on a map. It was the provocation Ibrahim had anticipated. Without flinching, he replied, you're absolutely right, Mr. President. Most Americans don't know where Burkina Faso is, but perhaps that says more about your education system than it does about the importance of my country. Trump's expression darkened. Are you saying we're ignorant? I'm not suggesting anything, Ibrahim replied evenly. I'm stating a fact. Burkina Faso ranks as the 74th largest country in the world. We have a population of 22 million, abundant natural resources, and a central role in West African geopolitics. The real question is, why hasn't America taken the time to learn that? Jake Tapper turned to Ibrahim. President Traoré, how do you respond to critics who say you're too young and inexperienced? Ibrahim's reply stunned the world. Looking straight into the camera. Ignoring Trump entirely, he addressed the American audience. I'll answer with facts. By the age of 35, I reduced extreme poverty in Burkina Faso by 31%. I built 1,200 new schools and 89 health clinics. I cut terrorist attacks in our region by 72%. Trump attempted to cut in, but Ibrahim continued, unfazed. Mr. Trump, you love numbers, so let's use them. In 3 years, Burkina Faso's GDP grew by 47%. What was your average GDP growth during your first term? Trump shifted uncomfortably. That's different. The U.S. economy is far more complex. You're right, Ibrahim nodded. It is more complex. But you inherited a fully developed system. I inherited a nation plagued by decades of instability and terrorism, and yet, look at the proportional results. Jake Tapper, sensing the rising tension, turned back to Trump. President Trump, how do you respond to these figures? Trump tried to pivot. Look, Ibrahim has some flashy stats, but let's focus on real issues like global security and our relationships with China and Russia. Perfect, Ibrahim interjected with measured grace. Let's talk global security. Burkina Faso is now the most stable nation in the Sahel. Our counterterror strategies are being studied in France, Germany, even by the Pentagon. And on China and Russia we maintain balanced, independent diplomacy. We don't compromise our sovereignty. Trump, visibly frustrated, snapped, you're going off track. What exactly is the track? Ibrahim asked, tilting his head with polite curiosity. That the United States still treats Africa like a backyard project instead of a partner, or that this new wave of African leadership refuses to be patronized. Trump's silence echoed louder than any rebuttal. Jake Tapper looked stunned, watching what had quickly become a masterclass in diplomacy. Realizing he was losing the narrative, Trump launched a harsher attack. All right, Ibrahim, you want to play tough. Let's talk about aid. Your country gets billions in foreign assistance. Without us, you'd be nothing. Ibrahim's counter came gently but hit like thunder. President Trump, during the break, I confirmed something with my team. Over the past 3 years, Burkina Faso has received $2.1 billion in foreign aid. In the same period, we exported $7.8 billion in gold, cotton, and other resources. That makes us a net contributor to the global economy, not a dependent. Trump blinked. That can't be accurate. I'm happy to share the spreadsheets with your staff after the broadcast. Ibrahim replied, almost kindly. It's all verified, World Bank, IMF, and our national data. As the debate shifted toward economics, Jake Tapper leaned in. Seizing the opportunity, President Traoré, how do you account for such a significant economic transformation? Ibrahim smiled, calm and assured. There are 3 core reasons: an aggressive crackdown on corruption, major investments in education and agriculture, and renegotiated mineral contracts that are finally fair to us. We've replaced the mindset of being a poor nation with that of an emerging economic force. Trump quickly tried to pivot and strike back. All right, but what about democracy? You came to power through a military coup, didn't you? Without flinching, Ibrahim nodded. Yes, we came to power through non-traditional means in 2022. But since then, we've held 6 local and regional elections, all monitored by international observers. Our next presidential election is scheduled for 2026, and I intend to run democratically. Trump jabbed again. Easy to talk about democracy when you control everything. Ibrahim laughed, genuinely amused. President Trump, just last month, our independent press published 47 articles critical of my government. May I ask how many critical articles were published about your administration in the last 30 days? The question caught Trump off guard. Well, that's different. The American media is biased. Ibrahim leaned slightly forward. Then we share something in common. Both of us deal with criticism. The difference lies in how we respond to it. Viewers across the globe were witnessing something extraordinary. A young African president engaging in high-level discourse and outmaneuvering the former U.S. president live. In prime time, sensing the gravity of the moment, Jake Tapper posed the question everyone had been waiting for. President Traoré, what is your direct message to the American people? Ibrahim paused for a moment, then turned toward the camera with a calm, sincere gaze. His voice, measured and resonant, filled the room. America, you are a great nation built on ideals of liberty, democracy, and innovation. But your leaders sometimes forget that these values only hold true when they're applied universally. Africa does not need saviors. We need partners who see us as equals. Trump began to interrupt, but Ibrahim continued without hesitation. President Trump, you've built a remarkable business empire. I respect that. But running a country is not the same as running a corporation. Leadership is not about margins, it's about human dignity. Trump visibly tensed. I know how to lead. Of course you do, Ibrahim said gently. But perhaps it's time to lead with humility, not dominance. America can indeed be great again, but not by pushing others down. True greatness lies in lifting others up. The words rang through the studio. Even Jake Tapper was visibly impressed by the poise and clarity of the statement. Trump scrambled for one last counter. You speak well, Ibrahim, but international relations require strength, not poetic speeches. Ibrahim gave a knowing smile. Strength without wisdom is just force. Wisdom without courage is just theory. True global leadership requires both, and sometimes, real strength is the ability to admit when we are wrong. For the first time in the evening, Trump didn't respond. A long silence followed. The man known for always having the final word found none. Jake Tapper, finally, cut in. We have 5 minutes left. Final remarks. Trump tried to rally. Americans, you know me. I've always put our country first. Ibrahim waited his turn, then spoke with simple clarity. I also put my country first. The difference is I believe every nation can rise together. It's not a zero-sum game. The debate was drawing to a close, but the ripple effects were just beginning. As the credits rolled, social media went into overdrive. Within minutes, the hashtag #Traoré trend was trending globally. Thousands of comments poured in. This young African leader just gave a global diplomacy masterclass. Trump just got schooled by someone young enough to be his grandson. Ibrahim Traoré should be teaching leadership. At Harvard, in Washington, chaos erupted inside Trump's camp. His communications director scrambled to prepare a rebuttal strategy. Mr. President, we need a response. Now. Trump sat back, visibly shaken. How did that kid make me look like an amateur? Steve Bannon didn't sugarcoat it, because you underestimated him. Completely. He's not just a politician, he represents a new wave of educated, eloquent, and fearless African leadership. Back in Ouagadougou, it was 3 a.m., but Ibrahim was still wide awake, fielding congratulatory calls from across the globe. President Macron phoned from France. Ibrahim, you've just shown us the future of diplomacy. A message arrived from the Chinese president, an extraordinary demonstration of youthful leadership. Even Vladimir Putin weighed in. Russia is open to deeper ties with leaders of your vision. In the U.S., the reaction was equally Jake Tapper went live again to say, in 25 years of journalism, I've never witnessed a debate this one-sided. Traoré was poised, prepared, and devastating. Even conservative pundits on Fox News admitted, let's be honest, this young African president made Trump look completely unprepared. The New York Times ran a bold editorial the next morning. Traoré's performance marks the end of an era in which Western leaders could casually dismiss African intellect. By noon, both Harvard and Yale had sent formal invitations for Ibrahim Traoré to lecture on modern global leadership. On Twitter, the reactions from American celebrities came pouring in. I just witnessed the future of global leadership, posted Leonardo DiCaprio. Oprah Winfrey added, that was a masterclass in grace and intelligence. Across Africa, a wave of continental pride surged. Celebratory rallies erupted spontaneously in Lagos, Nairobi, Accra, and Johannesburg. A sense of renewal had taken hold. A new political era was clearly dawning. Even 3 days after the debate, its impact continued to ripple through the global political arena like an aftershock in Washington. Trump was grappling with what many called the greatest credibility crisis of his second term. A national poll revealed that 68% of Americans believed Ibrahim Traoré appeared more presidential during the broadcast. Within the Republican Party, doubts began to surface. Senator Mitt Romney publicly stated, "Perhaps it's time we learn from younger, better-educated leaders, especially when they show us what leadership looks like." Even some of Trump's most loyal allies expressed concern. In a closed congressional meeting, one GOP leader bluntly remarked, "Donald looked totally out of touch. That young African president made him seem like a political fossil." In an attempt to regain control, Trump fired off a flurry of tweets, unfair debate, rigged questions, fake news. But each post only deepened the public backlash. One meme went viral, Trump ranting angrily beside a composed Ibrahim, with the caption, "This is what complaining looks like. This is what governing looks like." Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim faced a very different challenge, an overwhelming wave of international praise. His schedule overflowed with requests from elite universities, global institutions, and think tanks. Oxford, Cambridge, Sorbonne, MIT, they're all inviting you to speak, said his advisor, Moussa Kabor. But Ibrahim gently shook his head. "Our top priority must remain Burkina Faso. We can't allow global attention to distract us from the work that matters most here." At home, his wife Ajara noticed the shift. "The entire world is talking about you. How does it feel?" she asked. "It feels like responsibility," Ibrahim replied. "Every word I spoke in that debate wasn't just for MIT, was for a whole generation of African leaders. I must not let them down." Within a week, foreign investment in Burkina Faso had tripled. Corporations from the US, Europe, and Asia scrambled to associate themselves with the president who had outshone Trump live on air. But Ibrahim remained cautious. "We're not looking for trendy capital. We want long-term, meaningful partnerships that uplift our people." At a cabinet meeting, he was resolute. The debate was only a beginning. "Now we must prove that. We deserve this spotlight." 6 months later, the results were unmistakable. On every continent, the world was talking about the Burkina Faso miracle and the man behind it. Ibrahim Traoré had become a global icon of modern, youthful leadership. Burkina Faso was now receiving over 1,000 international visitors each month, diplomats, scholars, investors, all eager to see the transformation up close. In Washington, Trump never fully recovered from the humiliation. His approval rating dropped by 23 points after the debate and failed to bounce back. In the lead-up to the 2026 Republican primaries, he faced serious challengers, young candidates who promised a more respectful and cooperative foreign policy. America's global strategy began to shift. The newly appointed Secretary of State rolled out a bold new agenda, widely referred to as the Traoré Doctrine, treating African nations as equal partners, not junior allies. Universities across the U.S. added mandatory African studies to their core curriculum. Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim continued governing with the same humility and focus as before, only now the world was watching. Governments from 5 continents studied his initiatives. The Burkina Faso model became a case study in sustainable development. In an interview with Time magazine, who named him 2025's Person of the Year, Ibrahim reflected, "That debate wasn't about winning or beating anyone. It was about proving that Africa has competent, dignified, and prepared leaders. It was about representing our dignity." Ajara, now widely admired as one of the most influential first ladies in the world, shared her own perspective. "Ibrahim hasn't changed. It's the world that finally noticed what he's always been, a real leader." One quiet afternoon, Ibrahim was walking through the palace garden with his children. At 36, he was now regarded as one of the most respected leaders on earth. "Daddy," asked his 9-year-old daughter, "are you famous now?" Ibrahim smiled, as grounded as ever. "No, my dear. I just did on television what I do here every day, my duty." The debate had shocked America and the world. But more than that, it marked a turning point, a global awakening to mutual respect, authentic leadership, and generational change. Ibrahim Traoré hadn't just bested Donald Trump. He had inspired an entire generation to believe that competence and dignity will always prevail over arrogance and prejudice.